Good morning and welcome to the December 7th, 2021 regular meeting of the Lane County Board of Commissioners. The first item on our agenda is adjustments to the agenda. Are there any? Steve, no? Okay. Item 2, emergency business. Commissioners, staff, is there any emergency business? No, okay. Their next item is our public comment session. This is the opportunity for anyone from the public to provide testimony to this board. To people watching this meeting, when you registered to watch in this temporary virtual format, you know, they keep saying temporary. I'm just going to say in this virtual format, you were registered in our system as attendees. Attendees are webinar participants who are audience members viewing the meeting. Your microphone and your webcam are automatically muted as attendees, except for now. At this point, we're opening the meeting for public comment. If you wish to participate in public comment, please raise your virtual hand to be recognized by pressing the hand icon. When public comment begins, our meeting organizer, Ms. Diana Jones, will call names. When your name is called, you will be provided up to 3 minutes for public comment. When your 3 minutes are up, I'll give you a gentle nudge and request you finish up in 10 or 15 seconds. And when that occurs, you'll go back to muted status and the next name will be called. You can then continue to watch the webinar as long as you choose, and we'll try to give everyone who wishes the full 3 minutes to make public comment and have that opportunity. So at this point, Ms. Jones, are there any people wishing to make public comment to the board?
Thank you, Chair Bernie. Yes, I do see several hands raised. So I will begin calling names and start public comment. Our first presenter will be Danny Marino, followed by Ann Nealand. Danny, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin public comment.
I just finished hosting a holiday party, so what a switch. But I hope you're all doing well. And you know, I keep coming here and I will keep coming. So hopefully in some time we'll be happy because I'm a fun person, you know. So it sucks that I have to be so serious every time. Okay, so the massive COVID-19 vaccine rollout started a year ago, and the results are high COVID vaccination rates have not reduced transmission. In fact, the numbers are higher than last year. We have too many adverse effects. This, plus the fact that we don't have long-term safety data, should give the health professionals all sorts of red flags. It's sad to see so many doctors behaving like drug pushers. I want to note that Florida is living life normally and their numbers are outstanding. I think it's a very important case study, but you're not going to hear that in the media. I think that COVID-19 is not going away. It's going to keep mutating. You know, virus is going to be a virus. So I think that we should stop exaggerating and wasting so much money on this. Children's second shots are coming, which means that children are going to start having heart issues. So to the Lane County medical staff advising the board, if you start seeing children coming to the hospitals with heart issues, I please ask you to be transparent and share that information. Because if you don't, we already know how to get that data. I have it already lined up. I know how much I have to pay, who I have to ask. I can get all the records that I need. So if you're not transparent with that, I'll do it myself. I will do whatever it takes for transparency. We're keeping a close eye on that. So currently the presidential mandates are halted by the Federal Court of Appeals because they are unconstitutional. Like I've been saying, you know, they are unconstitutional. And with all this happening, Kate Brown, who I like less daily, has been planning with OHA to develop the digital vaccine records application and make the indoor masking rule. I am in absolute opposition to that. And to Kate Brown, I think that she should study the constitutions again. And I want to read parts of the Oregon Constitution. Natural rights inherent in people. We declare that all power is inherent in the people, and all free governments are founded on their authority, and they have at all times a right to alter, reform, or abolish the government in such matter as they may think proper. Kate Brown, we are bringing our voices to you because it looks like you're the next one that we need to talk to. And Board of Commissioners, if you are true about liberties, like you've shown, by not doing the blanket vaccine mandates. Please help us stop Kate Brown. We're going to work on that, and I hope that you'll support us. We don't need any more of these mandates. We don't need anything that she's pushing. Thank you so much for your support and for listening. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Our next speaker will be Ann Nealand, followed by Karen Kaplan. Ann, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your public comment. I do show yourself muted. There you go.
Good morning. As of December 6th, 2021, 8 states and DC have mask mandates. So 42 states honor the human right to breathe fresh oxygen, but not Oregon. How does this make sense? Last week, Oregon finally pulled back on the mandate requiring masks outdoors, except if you're a student. Children ages 12 and under have very low risks of catching COVID and thus very low risks of transmitting COVID. Even the CDC does not require masks outdoors regardless of vaccination status. Yet Oregon requires outdoor mask restrictions for children, but not for adults. How does this make sense? This past Sunday, I went to pick up takeout breakfast at a Eugene restaurant. Everyone was eating outside, waiting for their breakfast, no masks on, consistent with the new rule, enjoying it while it lasts. And when you go inside the front door, you must wear a mask. But when you go into the next room over through the large open doorway where the tables and booths are, where everyone sits in a packed restaurant at normal distances, there are no masks. How does this make sense? And when Oregon Governor Kate Brown was in DC just a few days ago, she mingled maskless and arm in arm with other maskless people. And on one hand, I want to ask again, how does this make sense? But I know the answer to my own question. She is a shameless hypocrite who imposes senseless mask restrictions on the people under her rule in Oregon, but she does as she pleases elsewhere. Is it a health issue or not, Kate? Do masks work or not, Kate? Does social distancing matter or not, Kate? Clearly not, and not. So what is it then? It is a Democratic-led march towards tyranny. Masks are bogus restrictions on our freedoms, testing how long people will tolerate the imposition, how long will people voluntarily comply with the deprivation, how long will people surrender to the prison that is being built all around us? And how long will you, as elected officials, stand by and support this constriction of our freedoms? How long will you stand with hypocritical Kate? How long will you passively remain on the wrong side of history before you have said enough is enough? Say no to the mask mandates. Say no to the vaccine passports. The writing is on the wall. You cannot claim the restrictions on our freedoms, our health mandates, or travel conveniences. Rather, it is all thinly veiled tyranny, and you will be held to account for your loyalties and actions.
Thank you for your public comment. Our next speaker is Karen Kaplan, followed by Tom Kreider. Karen, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your public comment. I do show you are self-muted.
Good morning, commissioners. Thank you for considering a countywide styrofoam ban of food containers. I appreciate your willingness to have a work session on this topic. And when I made public comment and listened to the work session, I was wondering, what is the process moving forward? I want to point out that our group, the Citizens for Responsible Use of Plastics, has been working on this and meeting with commissioners since 2017. Thank you for pointing that out, Commissioner Farr, which is already 4 years have passed. As staff pointed out in the last meeting, it will take at least 7 years for the state to implement the modernizing recycling bill, which will hopefully, but not definitively, move the state away from polystyrene. That is not a given. If it does actually happen, it will be 11 years since this important public health issue was brought up with the county commission. Additionally, staff stated that the state of Maine was banning this material through the state's recent passing of a similar bill to Oregon on producer responsibility. Actually, Maine completed banning styrofoam, polystyrene food containers in 2019 with full implementation in July 2021. Prior to passing the EPR bill, the state of Maine passed an EPR legislation separate from the styrofoam ban in 2021, and it will take years to fully implement this legislation. Maine did not want to wait to ban this carcinogen. The state of Oregon voted on a polystyrene ban in 2019, and it was voted down by one vote with the idea and condition that Agilex, an Oregon company that melts down styrofoam, would set up collections and recovery system in Oregon. This did not happen, and the legislature did not follow through after conditions were set and not met. Sadly, this bill was proposed again, and the legislature declined to hold a hearing on it. A growing number of states are passing this legislation while Oregon lags. Where the modernization bill passed, it does not directly address polystyrene packaging, and as staff mentioned, it could take at least 7 years to get the bill implemented, again, with no guarantees on addressing polystyrene food containers. With Eugene and Florence already banning this material with no incidents or challenge to these ordinances or any issues with implementation, it just makes sense that the county would take leadership on this issue and ban it in the county. The Public Health Advisory Committee studied this issue for months and made a recommendation to ban it while discovering that it causes cancer, as affirmed by the World Health Organization. The idea that this would be time-consuming, meet challenges from constituents and take up another year is unproven, based upon the experience of the two largest cities in the county. This is something that is already in place and ready to go, and already has been demonstrated over and over again as the right thing to do. Enforcement in Eugene is backed by education, and though there is a fine for not following the law, the city has been working to educate and assist businesses to comply. As I understand it, there have not been any fines issued. The city asks the citizens to report violations. This system has been working.
I apologize. Wait, your time is up. Could you wrap up in about 15 seconds?
Okay, and it has not been a burden on city resources. When will the commission act on this path forward? There are many places around the world that have passed the same law and have an implementation period. I urge the county to stop finding reasons to not do this and take action. When will the commission resolve this and pass a full county ban on this deadly material? Thank you for your time and service.
Thank you for your public comment. Our next speaker is Tom Kreider, followed by Cynthia Matherly. Tom, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your public comment. I do show you are self-muted. There you go.
Good morning. My name is Tom Kreider and I live in Ward 4. I appreciate the fact that you allow members of the public to make comments. Before retiring as a science educator, at times I had to reteach material to my students. You can imagine the rolled eyes and heads as I started in stressing what I had previously taught. Today, you may feel the same way about my comments as they are focused on the reasons for Lane County to adopt an ordinance that bans restaurant polystyrene. For the most part, I'm quoting from a fact sheet that the city of Monson, Massachusetts prepared in advance of a polystyrene ban for that community. Styrene has been identified as a probable carcinogen. In a study of the migration of styrene in polystyrene cups of hot drinks, it was found that the concentration of styrene in drinks was above the EPA recommended levels, including the maximum contaminant level gold standard. In addition, benzene, a component of polystyrene, is a known carcinogen and enters the body through the respiratory system and skin contact. Polystyrene food items are a major litter problem. The foam form is very light so that even when properly disposed of, they often blow away and break up, and then are carried into lakes and waterways and eventually into the ocean. Polystyrene items make up the 5th largest type of litter from land-based sources found on US coasts. Polystyrene foam is often mistaken as food by both domesticated and wild bird and animals. Birds may also use foam for nesting material. In 2006, the United Nations Environment Program estimated that in every square mile of ocean, there were 46,000 pieces of floating polystyrene that could potentially kill birds and fish. A California case study showed that 162 marine species, mostly seabirds, were reported to have eaten polystyrene and other plastics. I know a ban on restaurant polystyrene will result in restaurants pushing back. Given how busy drive-thrus are these days, people will still be buying takeout meals and paying a bit more to cover the cost of the use of non-toxic food containers. Public education will be vital for the success of a Lane County ban on restaurant polystyrene. In conclusion, I urge you not to put off banning restaurant polystyrene in Lane County. No one wants to eat a meal from a restaurant's container that potentially will threaten their health. Food is meant to sustain and nurture health rather than cause illness. I want to thank you for all the work you do. I gained a lot more insight into the challenges you face by listening to the entire Commissioners Board meeting last week.
Thank you for your public comment. Our next speaker is Cynthia Matherly, followed by Harry Sanger. Cynthia, I will start the timer and you may begin your public comment.
Thank you, County Commissioners. First, I want to again thank you for working on behalf and towards a healthier Lane County. To continue to do so, you'll need to move to ban single-use toxic polystyrene foam containers and foodware. I'm part of a small ad hoc group of concerned citizens for the responsible use of plastics called CRUP. We join with other organizations on a kind of roadmap to a less toxic environment. One thing we've been doing is calling on county commissioners since 2017 to ban polystyrene foam food and beverage ware. It's rarely recycled and contains harmful cancer-causing chemicals. Communities of people working and living near its manufacturing are at great risk of being sickened and dying early from its production. And as you know, Lane County's Health Advisory Board Committee recommended it should be banned. This issue became personal when my teenage son ordered a to-go slice of pizza that arrived in a polystyrene foam clamshell container. It was scored and greasy from the hot, acidic tomato sauce and cheese. Not at all appetizing since known cancer-causing chemicals leach from EPS foam containers into food. While working on a citywide ban, that same scorched and scarred container was brought to a city council meeting for all the council to view. After the meeting, an industry rep from Agilex asked if he could take that container and recycle it. I answered to him that no amount of recycling could change the fact that the container would cause toxins released into the environment and cancer in the manufacturing and use of it. He actually agreed. Considering the adverse health risks EPS foodware presented, it should most likely be banned. Our CRUP group, along with many other organizations, helped to pass a citywide ordinance in Eugene to ban polystyrene foodware. And now by not banning it countywide, you are continuing to say to the people who run food, beverage businesses and services that it's okay to purchase and serve to customers a toxic to manufacture and a toxic to use single-use item that isn't recyclable. Banning polystyrene foam foodware in Lane County should be a no-brainer. It would take commissioners only a few meetings to do so. Commissioners, we've all been at this since 2017. It's past time to make a move to ban. Thank you again for your time and all your hard work.
Thank you for your public comment. I do show our final speaker is Harry Sanger. If you have registered for public comment and you would like to give public comment following Harry Sanger's testimony, please raise your hand and I will call on you following this testimony. Harry, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your testimony.
Hello, Lane County Commissioners, Chair Burney, and administrative staff. Thank you for the work you do for Lane County and presenting the opportunity for public comment this morning. Do you hear that? It's time to wake up. The COVID nightmare is over. This ends now. The pinned tweet at the top of the Lane County Public Health Twitter feed is encouraging parents to get their 5 to 11-year-olds vaccinated. Wow. Is this a cult? So much propaganda, but where is the science behind this assault on our children? Why are you encouraging our neighbors to submit their children to this live human trial? A practically untested gene therapy treatment for young children who are statistically immune from the virus. What is wrong with you? Do you have no moral scruples? You're not acting as commissioners reflective of the value of your constituents. You're acting as commissars who seem to know better than the proletariat. Stop using my tax money to fund your ignorant propaganda. Start using it to meet in person so that we, the people, can see you and that you can see us. I do not consent to your assault on our county, destroying small local businesses, supporting segregation and discrimination. This needs to end now. This weekend, we saw Governor Kate Brown at a DC Gala fundraiser not wearing a mask, socializing in a mask-free environment as we all could if we stopped complying. I call on all Lane County residents to follow the governor's example and stop wearing the masks. Most stores in Oregon will allow you to shop mask-free. Don't ask for permission, just do it. This ends now. Stop testing unapproved emergency use medical treatments on our children. The supposed vaccine does not confer immunity. There is no zero COVID. This is a lie fabricated by those in power to retain their power and siphon our power back into the system. Take off the mask. It isn't scientifically sound. An honest media would play both sides of the debate, and we would remember how to ask why. Why are you doing this? Are you so risk adverse that you would destroy our mental health and local economy before you admit to being wrong about your assumptions that led to shutdowns and mandates? This needs to end now. The state is working on a vaccine passport under the name Smart Health Cards. Are we going to be subject to endless booster requirements to maintain access to concerts and sporting events? What happens when that extends to access to grocery stores? When will you stand up and say, enough? Boosters make sense for the elderly, at-risk individuals who now have an mRNA vaccine-reliant immune system. The rest of us need to practice clean, sanitary, and healthy living. When will you lead by example and protect our freedoms instead of blindly following the suppression of our society? Temporary is not 21 months in duration. Our authoritarian state of emergency should have ended a month or two after it began, allowing the legislature to respond with laws, not the executive to rule by administrative decree. Take off the masks. Stop driving the fear. Lead by example. This ends now.
Thank you for your public comment. Chair Bernie, I do not see any other additional hands raised, so I will return the meeting to you.
You're muted, Chair.
I am so sorry. I apologize. I didn't want to interrupt those providing testimony. Thank you very, very much. Excuse the delay to Danny Love, Ann Neeland, Karen Kaplan, Tom Kreider, Cynthia Matherly, and Harry Sanger for providing public testimony. At this time, it's the opportunity for any commissioners to respond to public comments or identify other issues and remonstrances. Are there commissioners that would like to speak? Yes, Vice Chair Farr.
Thank you, Chair Bernie. I believe Commissioner Trieger raised her hand ever so slightly before me, so please, if I may ask Lori to go ahead.
I've been corrected by Vice Chair Farr. Therefore, Commissioner Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Vice Chair. Good morning, everyone. I just want to note there was a news story this morning about the ever increasing volume of microplastics being found in our waterways, oceans, creeks, lakes, rivers, and really appreciate the commentary from folks about the polystyrene ban. And clearly we have a lot more work to do, both here at the county, the state, nationally, and really internationally, in what kind of products we use and the impact they have on the environment and human health. So very much appreciate testimony from the three folks who spoke to that issue this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair Bernie. Two things really quickly to the speakers this morning, two general topics. One, the science of vaccinations and virus control. The second is the science of styrofoam. And I think that this Board of Commissioners has both high on the agenda. We will talk about both issues and and discuss at length over the next week and coming weeks regarding both of those issues. So thanks for the testimony. Chair Bernie, what I really wanted to talk about this morning was ever so briefly about a high school in West Eugene. It's Kalapuya High School. It's in the Bethel School District. It's an alternative high school. We all know about it. Small high school that caters is not the exact word. It serves kids who otherwise don't respond or perform very well in the standard high school setting, with a very high success rate, very high graduation rate. That school, at the end of every year, Senator James Manning and his wife LaWanda have given scholarships, college scholarships, to many of the kids who move on to college education and to careers beyond that. I spent the morning yesterday at Kalapuya High School talking with a class of two combined classes about homelessness in Lane County. Now, I will state this. We all know this, that many of the kids who are having difficulty in regular school do have issues surrounding adequate housing and stable housing. So the kids in the room were the kids that we're talking about, who are struggling to be educated in a place where sometimes they're not sure exactly where they're going to go home tonight. They're not sure exactly sometimes, maybe whether they're going to have a meal tonight. There's less issues regarding that, but and I'm not here to wring my hands about that. What I wanted to state is that these kids are proactively talking about homelessness. They wanted to talk about youth homelessness in Lane County and what we are doing, and significantly how we are coordinating our efforts with the cities, with Eugene and Springfield, and with the smaller, more outlying cities. Very informed and educated discussion that we had. A group of the kids, as one of the class projects, is not the class project, it's what they do. They're building tiny homes. They're starting to build tiny homes that they can package and send to different places. They're shelters. They're basically shelters, not unlike our pallet shelters that Lane County provides to the city and other agencies. But I want you to tell you that these kids who have a high graduation rate, who otherwise may not be going to school, are being educated regarding homelessness and how to best respond and best significantly cooperate with all jurisdictions to make sure we're addressing things at the very root, of the very base need. There are a couple of heart-rending discussions toward the end, and I say this with deep emotion. A young girl in the front row was maybe a freshman, maybe a sophomore, so you can calculate her age from that. She'd been quiet throughout the entire meeting, and she looked at me and she said, "Commissioner Farr, how do you feel when you hear about homeless kids?" Thanks.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Any other commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Bozovich.
Thank you. I couldn't let today go by without recognizing that today is the 80th anniversary of Harbor. My father-in-law was a World War II veteran. I know many World War II veterans. That was a period of time in our history where we fought back against dictatorial fascism and basically people that wanted to take control of this world under their dictatorships. From Mussolini to Hitler, it was a time where our country struggled to maintain our freedoms. And as I'm listening to a lot of public testimony, I think constantly of my governing philosophy, which is to maximize individual rights and freedom in my decision-making, and to leave some things to actually the public domain to be decided. I supported the legalization of cannabis because I believe people can make their own decisions as adults, as consenting adults. I don't support some prohibitions and bans because I believe we can have those discussions in the public domain and change people's behaviors that way. I don't believe we should not offer vaccinations because I believe people can look at the facts and decide their risk levels on their own. So every time I think about our decisions, I think back to things like Pearl Harbor and that war to maintain a free society on this globe and trying to govern on the basis of freedom and individual rights.
Thank you. Anyone else? I would just like to say that following Commissioner Bozovich's remarks, I too, and I think all of us, believe in personal liberty and freedoms. We're Americans. I believe that most of us, maybe all of us, certainly I, have father-in-law and father who were veterans of World War II. Father-in-law, Battle of the Bulge, liberated Auschwitz, part of those groups. Father, a mechanical engineer, developing some of the mechanisms to photograph, if you can believe this, the dropping of the bombs that were on those newsreels that we all saw when we were kids, when we went to the movies. So we're all in this together. We're all Americans. We all believe in freedom, rights, Constitution. And I thank the people that testified on both issues, as Vice Chair Parr pointed out, science of vaccines, science of environment, and polystyrene in this case. And he is correct. We're grappling with these details either in this or next week's meeting. We continue to, we do our best. We listen to everyone, and everyone has elements of truth that we need to hear when they speak. So thank you again very much. Thank you, commissioners. Unless there's any other commissioner that would like to make a comment, we will move on our agenda. Okay, item 5, consent agenda. Do I have a motion? Vice Chair Farr.
Chair Bernay, I move the consent calendar of December 7th, 2021.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear who said.
I'll second.
Thank you. The consent calendar for December 7th, 2021 has been made by Vice Chair Farr, seconded by Commissioner Buck. Is there discussion to the motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let the record show that the consent agenda for consent calendar for December 7th, 2021, moved by Vice Chair Farr, seconded by Commissioner Buck, has been approved unanimously, 5 votes to 0. Item 6, County Council. Sir, do you have any announcements for us today?
Just 2 brief ones, Chair, members of the board. Next week, next Monday, the newest Assistant County Counsel, Marcus V'ger, will be starting. Hopefully I'll have an opportunity to introduce him to you. And we continue to make slow progress trying to resolve the opioid litigation before January 2nd. And as those, hopefully when that resolves, I'll be able to report that to the board, but those are all the announcements I have.
Thank you very much. Before you leave, are there any questions for County Council at this time? Sorry, Steve, thank you very much. Okay. Item 7, County Administration, 7A, discussion in the matter of presenting the first quarter FY 21-22 financial report, and Christine Moody, our Budget and Financial Planning Manager, will provide that report. Ms. Moody.
Thank you, Chair Bernay, Commissioners. So this is our first quarter financial report for the current fiscal year. I'll just quickly go through some of the economic highlights for us. Overall, unemployment, we're starting to see nationally and locally come down. So nationally down to 4.8%, locally about 5.2%. CPI, as everyone is aware, is high at this point. So this is again looking September to September, the end of the first quarter. At that point, the national CPI year over year was 5.39%. Since that time, it has continued to go up, but we'll report that to you with your next quarter report. We do have locally jobs that were lost at the beginning of the pandemic. It's estimated that about 71% of those jobs have been regained. So within the report, you'll see some information on the different sectors where that's occurring. most recently, it looks like jobs are being added in the government sector, which does include places like U of O and other places. Housing, as I think the commissioners are well aware, the prices have gone up dramatically over the last year. So the September to September comparisons there for you. We show you both average sale price, which went up to $428,000, and then the median has gone up 19.5% year over the year and is up at $394,000. We also have some information there in the report for you on the permit data. We focus on Lane County's permits. So there are increases. Of course, those are, we tell you percentage increases, and those aren't really large numbers, but you can see the few years of history there to show you what's happening there, both on the residential and the commercial side. One thing I'll point out to you on the actual comparison of actuals to budget. In the report, there's one all county funds report where we're just showing you how we compare to budget and actuals. While we're trending fine and there's no reason for any concern, there is just an odd number I want to point out to you, and that is that you'll see that federal revenue is a negative number in the first quarter. That's showing the lag in time that it's taking for us to receive reimbursement. Many times it's FEMA and other things. As you know, we're applying for quite a bit of federal money or grants that we've been awarded. And so if we believe we're going to receive the money by June 30th, we report that on our financials. And if we don't receive it, it becomes a negative in the beginning of the year until we receive it. So that's just showing that we're still waiting to receive money. Doesn't mean that in the long term that number will actually stay negative. It will not. You'll also see a specific report on the general fund there. Again, no, we're well within budget to actuals. We're trending as we expect. You do have a supplemental number 2 budget coming to you next week. So that will also, in that all county funds report where we show the fund balance being about 127% of budget, that will correct when we adjust the budget to be the actual cash we brought forward. So this will change after we have this next supplemental. The one other thing I'll just highlight for you is that we plan to bring you the second quarter report when we do the budget kickoff with leadership team. That's when we have Brian Rooney, who is local economist with the state of Oregon, come and present to you. So we feel like that would be a great time for you to actually be able to talk with the economist instead of just hear me state the numbers back to you. So more dialogue there, and then we'll wrap in the second quarter at the same time. So with that, I'm open for any questions.
Commissioners, any questions or comments on that report? Yes, Commissioner Bozovich, I saw your hand. Yes, sir.
Thank you. So we don't get a brief report on the road fund. So I'll just ask real quick, have we received any of the payments that were related to the re-up of an increase in SRS funding yet that was in the infrastructure bill?
No, we have not received those payments, Commissioner Bozovich, Chair Bernie. So we will watch for those. It will take a while. They have been more delayed every year. I'll tell you, whereas we used to receive those payments in maybe November of the year that we were supposed to receive them, many times it's now the spring. So we'll let you know, but I expect that it's going to take a little bit of time.
Can you tell us briefly of approximately how much of an increase to the road fund and general fund that change in SRS back to 2017 rates will be for the next 3 years? From what we estimated?
Commissioner Bozovich, Chair Bernie. So I'm actually not prepared on that. I know that we did some initial estimates for you. I can send that to the board. What we need to compare is, as the board may be aware, we budget for timber receipts anytime that Secure Rural Schools is not in place when we build the budget. So we need to go calculate the difference to tell you a true increase, since we're already anticipating some timber. So I will have to get back to you on that. I apologize. I don't have that handy.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I had a question on the last page. Well, actually, it's page 6 of our memo here of the general fund. On the graph that says general fund operating revenues quarter ending September 30th, the taxes and assessment number for 21-22 showed a negative 45% variance, comparatively speaking, to the previous years. Is there some descriptor as to why it's lower than previous years at that same time?
It really is the lag in just when we receive the payment, because we really are telling you exactly what we had on September 30th. So while those, I haven't seen anything that's concerning on those receipts, like we are seeing car rental tax and some of those come back. So this does not include any current year property taxes, of course, because the statement hasn't gone out by September 30th. So this really is more of those small taxes that were within the fund. So it really is more a lag of time. I'm not seeing anything concerning about the actual tax. And now that I've seen past the quarter, it seems to be trending well and will probably actually be increasing our budget. So it's more a timing thing than anything to be concerned with there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other commissioners? I see no other questions on that report. Anecdotally, Ms. Moody, it's always so disappointing to hear the average and median home prices go up and up and up and up as this body is constantly trying to figure out and work with so many groups to provide shelter and more homes, affordable homes, et cetera. It just seems like we're bucking against a market that's just going the direction it's going right now. Are there no, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
Just agreeing with you, Commissioner Berney.
Are there any other statements, comments, questions for Ms. Moody? Seeing none, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
This is my next to last meeting as chair, and this is the first time we've ever been so on item that we're early, and we have a 10 a.m. time certain. It's 9:45. I know that Mr. Mokrahajski, you offered to provide a CAO report, and that would be greatly appreciated at this time.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Good morning. I'd like to take a few minutes. This works out really well to be able to do this, to share an update with you regarding the LaWanda Manning Memorial. And so I'm going to share with you, and I will forward out what Alex Kyler has put together. Alex may be able to join us. He had another meeting this morning, but he may be able to jump online here and answer some questions. He really has been the one leading this work, and so I'm reporting on his work. So I'm just going to walk through, and I'll forward you a one-page overview that Alex has put together, but I'm just going to walk through it for you in this meeting. Prior to her untimely death, LaWanda Manning was a highly successful woman and an effective change agent. Her intellect and unique interpersonal skill set, combined with her role as the chief of staff for Senator James Manning, created an environment where she wielded influence in any number of public policy discussions, decision-making, and appropriations. Subsequent to learning of her death, the Board of Commissioners passed an order directing the county administrator to consider options for how Lane County could play a role in honoring her life. Staff worked off a hypothesis that a dynamic individual placed into an environment similar to the one that LaWanda worked within could evolve a network of new peers and turn that exposure into a career within the public policy arena, an industry that currently has few formal pathways to employment and would benefit from a more diverse employment base. One of the things that we've developed over the last several years is an internship, a paid internship program for women and individuals of color within our organization, and work to place. I've reported over the years to the board about the number of individuals that we've placed into paid internships across the organization, and then subsequent number of individuals that we've hired into our workforce into full-time roles as a result of that. So part of this effort is recognizing that lifelong goal of and work of LaWanda Manning, and trying to bolster some of the efforts that Lane County has been involved in previously. So this staff report outlines a proposal that was designed with several important outcomes. Those include to provide an efficient path to employment for young women of color via a project temporarily called the LaWanda Manning Can Do Project. The creation of a pilot project to test assumptions and undertake operationalization, I'm going to verify that that's a word, of the project under the governance of an executive steering committee to provide new linkages between Lane County and state, federal, and private partners by creating a structured, brief, and specific paid internship located in executive office environments, and tackling current issues of importance that are pertinent across both public and private sectors by researching and reporting on the contextual environment and what role each executive office plays in that context. So you start to get a flavor sort of what the goal is to create opportunity and empowerment and to seed opportunities within executive roles particularly for women of color. So the project would need an executive steering committee, a source of interns, a source of funding for the interns, a source of willing executive partners with some degree of staff support, and a final event to celebrate the reporting out of the work. Each project would have a duration of 4 to 8 weeks. So this is somewhat modeled after some of the work that we've done with our internship within this organization, but would broaden the number of entities that would participate in that. So I think a really exciting, great job of sort of not reinventing, efforts, but trying to identify some things that have worked really well, but broadening that in the community. So we would have an executive committee that would include Senator Manning and others, yet to be identified private sector representatives, staff support from Lane County, commission representation, the intergovernmental relations manager. The committee would identify and bring in the executive partners for any given project. The first project would explore childcare. Executive partners would be Lane Community College, Looking Glass, an employer in the office, in the governor's office. An intern would be selected via an application process already established by Lane County Department of Human Resources, which provides employment pathways for students of color from the University of Oregon, the program that I mentioned. Each executive partner would work collaboratively to design a research project with essential similarities across each partner, including how does the context of childcare writ large fit into this organization? What data does this organization collect and how is it utilized? What are the barriers and opportunities for the organization when it comes to childcare? Do the identified executive partners continue to work together under a unified vision that involves next steps that can be implemented? And then a summary event would involve a presentation which explores the work as well as identifies the network established by the intern. When we've done those celebration events, it's really a great opportunity for the interns who've done the work to be able to display the work they've done, their experience, their contributions, to have sort of that exposure. It's a networking opportunity for those interns. And then, of course, it's an opportunity for the organization that hosted those interns to learn from their experience. So it's really, I attend those celebration events, and they're really one of the more enjoyable things that I get to participate in each year. So that's the overall context. The board had asked for a report back on this by the end of the year. So this is your report back. I will send out this one-page overview to the commissioners later this morning. And I know that that Mr. Kyler has been working with the University of Oregon and LCC, a number of partners. He's communicated with Commissioner Farr. My understanding is Commissioner Farr has had some conversation with Senator Manning. So you may have, Commissioner Farr, some additional thoughts or comments on that. But I'm really excited about this work and thank Mr. Kyler and everyone who's been involved to date. So would welcome your comments, certainly questions, and I'll do my best if Mr. Kyler is not yet joined us. I don't see him online here yet, but we'll turn it over to you, Chair, for any comments or questions.
Commissioners? Vice Chair Farr.
Thank you. Not much to say beyond what Ms. Mokrasky has already outlined. Mr. Kyler's put a great deal of effort into this. One thing that's exciting about it is that at the memorial service for LaWanda Manning, you may recall from those of y'all who were present that it was a tremendous outpouring. The entire Senate was there, and the Senate closed down that day. At the memorial service, I had a chance to talk about the conceptual idea of what Mr. Mokrasky is outlining right now. And I was seated beside Governor Kate Brown. And when I sat down beside Governor Brown, she leaned over and said, "You'll be needing state assistance on this." And I said, "Yes." So I took that as an invitation to help provide the means to make this happen. And Governor Brown is, shall we say, invigorated to help with this. And I'm looking forward to this moving forward. There are obviously some steps that we need to take, some pretty significant steps to make this occur. Senator Manning is aware of it and conceptually is thrilled about it. In fact, at some point, this is kind of weird, but at some point today, I think you'll see Senator Manning actually step into my office during this meeting. He has something he's dropping off, and if that does happen, I'll have him say hello to the board at that point in time. But this is it's Mr. Mokrasky, the work that you and your staff are doing on this is tremendous, and it will have a huge, huge impact on so many different fronts. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Buck.
I just want to throw in my huge support for all this work that's been done to get us to this point. I think it's just a wonderful way to honor and recognize LaWanda in this way, and it couldn't be more supportive. And thank you for Commissioner Farr for helping facilitate all this.
And please, let me deflect all of that. This is, I do absolutely nothing in this, Commissioner Buck. The community is involved. Thank you.
Commissioner Buck, was that it? Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Briefly, I just also want to thank everyone involved, staff, and of course, Senator Manning through such a hard time to also be working on this. And I'm going to not let Vice Chair Farr off the hook, or at least taking a small measure of credit for helping to shepherd this really important project along. Really appreciate all your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Any other commissioners? I would like to say a couple of things. First, interestingly, Councillor Pitt from Springfield and has been trying to work on an internship. He works at the U of O's business school. He is counseling students of color and women and others through the program. He is not aware of any U of O connection here. So I want to underscore Mr. Kyler's making sure that through Councillor Pitt of Springfield, that he's involved, because he has a cadre of students he's trying to place, number one. Number two, Councillor Greg Evans of Eugene, who works at Lane Community College, has also never fulfilled his desire to have internships such as we are speaking. And whomever Mr. Kyler is working with at LCC, please, I would request he makes sure and touches base with Councillor Evans. I would like to say I wish we were not having this discussion. I know Commissioner Farr is close to Senator Manning and LaWanda, and as fate would have it, my wife and I are also. In fact, Maddie and Luanda had a really interesting relationship. I had the opportunity to drive to Bend with Senator Manning not long after Luanda departed. And all I can say is that this is a person who feels this to his core. I don't think she has left him. I believe she guides his path. And I am honored, as I know we all are, that you followed through on this, Mr. Mokrehayski, and we can create a tribute that is living as much as she lives with her husband. So thank you very much. Magically, it is now 9:57. So commissioners, do you have any problem with moving back onto the agenda? Although this was great. Thank you, Steve. I'm going to presume everyone is ready. So we are now on item 7, County Administration. B, the second reading and public hearing, ordinance 21-09, in the matter of amending Chapter 8 of the Lane Code to extend the terms and franchise agreement with Comcast of Oregon to 11, whichever that is, for operation of a cable communication system through to December 30, 2022, deleting and replacing in its entirety ordinance 20-04. This is a public hearing. Today's date is Tuesday, December 7th, 2021. The order of proceedings for this hearing will be first, the report by staff, followed by public testimony, and then any additional comments by commissioners and staff. Participants are encouraged to raise issues or concerns with sufficient specificity to enable the county to address or respond to them prior to the board's deliberations. At this time, we must call for any disclosure of any board of commissioner abstentions due to conflict of interest or biases. Are there any? And I apologize, but when Commissioner Bozievich rejoins, I'm going to have to ask him also if he has any conflicts, but I don't see him. Commissioner Bozievich, can you hear us? We also will call for any challenges to the board's qualifications to hear the matter. And at this time, we will now hear the report by staff. And I believe with us is Christine Moody, Budget and Financial Planning Manager of Lane County. I'm sorry, Ms. Moody. Commissioner Bozievich, do you have any reason to any conflicts or reasons to abstain? No. Okay. Thank you. Had to check. Yes, Vice Chair Farr.
Chair Bernie, I apologize, but I don't think this is a reason, but I will say it anyway out of precaution. Or Comcast, formerly Teleprompter, has been contributed to my campaigns in running for office a number of times.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ms. Moody, now, if you would.
Thank you, Chair Bernie, Commissioners. So this being the second reading, I know that the board heard comments from me a few weeks ago, but I'll just briefly go over that again. So as mentioned, this is a franchise with Comcast to provide cable services. This is a 10-year agreement. We're in this franchise together with City of Eugene and City of Springfield. So it is the 3 jurisdictions that negotiate to renew the franchise. This franchise first expired back in 2018. We have been doing extensions as we've worked through those negotiations, most notably as we've waited for a decision from the Federal Cable Commission on some provisions in the law related to local governments and what can be offset from cable franchise fees. For us, it impacts whether there's any gratuitous cable services provided within public buildings, which has been something that's been common. So as we waited for that decision, when it did come down, it was unfavorable to local governments. And so several local governments filed lawsuits to have that clarified. We were not a party there, but City of Eugene, who is on our agreement, is. And so that is under appeal now, and we do not expect to have a decision by the end of the year here. So we're asking for another year extension of this franchise. It is a time extension only for 1 year. So the provisions of the franchise stay in place as we continue negotiations with the hope that we can resolve by next December 2022. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'm sorry, at this time, we're to hear public testimony, but should I open technically the public hearing before we request public testimony?
I believe that's how we typically do it. Yes, Chair Bruni.
That's how we'll do it. This public hearing is now open. This is the point where any member of the public can provide testimony on this issue. Ms. Jones, is there anyone that would like to provide testimony?
Thank you, Chair Bernie. At this time, if you have registered for this meeting to give public testimony on this item, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Chair Bernie, I do not see any hands, so I will return the meeting to you.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Moody, any additional comments from you?
Thank you, Chair Bernie. No additional comments.
Then this public hearing is closed. It is time for any discussion and action by the Board of Commissioners. Commissioners, discussion? Seeing and hearing none? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Is there a motion? Vice Chair Farr.
Thank you. I'm seeking a motion, and bear with me 1 second.
I could help you.
I had to change screens back. So we have a technology service. I'm viewing the material. I don't see a motion. So please help me with a motion.
Ms. Moody, my understanding is that you would like at this time the board to move to approve ordinance number 2109 as presented. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chair Bernie.
That would be the motion, but I can't make it.
And once again, I apologize. I'm looking through all the materials, and it says no motion for this item is the head of the materials that I'm seeing today. So,
Vice Chair Farr, you're looking at the item for the technology presentation and not ordinance 2109.
Absolutely correct. Then, Chair Bernie, I see. I'm one step. I'm reading ahead on the agenda. I apologize. So then, Chair Bernie, I move ordinance 21-09 in the matter of amending Chapter 8 of Lane Code to extend the term and franchise agreement with Comcast of Oregon 2 for operation of a cable communication system to December 30th, 2022, deleting and replacing in its entirety ordinance 20-04.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I want to commend Vice Chair Farr on his excellent recovery and thank you and making of the motion. And I thank Commissioner Buck for seconding it. It is now moved and seconded to approve ordinance 21-09. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Chair Bernie, by
roll call.
Are you kidding? I'm never going to learn this. Thank you so much.
You still have another meeting in the year.
Next time, Commissioner Bozovich, just know I don't know this and let me know beforehand. Okay, I apologize.
Commissioner Trieger.
Trigger votes aye.
Commissioner Buck.
Aye.
Commissioner Farr.
Aye.
Commissioner Bozovich.
Aye.
And Commissioner Bernie.
Aye.
The ordinance passes 5-0.
Thank you very much. Well, Chair and Vice Chair both kind of flubbed a little on that one, but thank you very much.
Please don't fire us.
Mr. Mokrahisi, since you are here, are there any further announcements?
Nope, I have no more announcements. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I believe that gets us to item 8, technologies on our agenda today, technology services. 8A is a discussion, a telecommunications update, and development of a regional vision. And we have with us Mike Finch, Director, Technology Services, Austin Ramirez, Community and Economic Development Manager, and Mike Harmon, Lane Radio System Manager, and Alex Kyler, Intergovernmental Relations Manager. Gentlemen.
Good morning, Chair Bernie, Commissioners. Thank you for your time today. Mike Finch, Mike Harmon, Alex Kyler, and I were excited to have this discussion with you today around telecom and a proposed vision to expand not only resilient but accessible telecommunications infrastructure throughout all of Lane County. The timing is perfect. As we all know, we have a unique opportunity as a county government with considerable amounts of funding we've never seen before coming from the state and federal government to fund telecommunications infrastructure, especially in rural areas and underserved areas, and to provide broadband internet. And with that, in our region, we have a lot of players, a lot of partners that are doing this work. And so we feel it's incredibly important that the county define a regional vision and our role, whether it's a broker of funding coming in to other projects, whether we're directly investing in that infrastructure or finding ways for innovative partnerships in the public and private sector. So before we jump in, we have a 15-minute video that Neil Moyer and Mike Finch helped put together. It's a really great video. There's a lot of information. It features Mike Harmon and I, as well as some of the key partners in our region. So Pam Berrien at the City of Eugene, Matt Sayer at Onward Eugene, and Jake Hollister at LCOG. And so I think it'll be a great way to begin the discussion and set the stage for what's to come. Diana, can you please start that video for us?
Broadband today is a little easier to understand in terms of its definitions than it was a few weeks ago. And that's because of the $1.2 trillion Infrastructure Act that was signed. Within that, there is a $65 billion broadband component. And then there are several programs within those components that are spelled out in a great amount of detail in terms of funding special projects. They're broken down into rural projects, connectivity programs under USDA. You've got funds set aside for digital inclusion, which include addressing at-risk youth and others that may be new, young or old, to the internet platform. Global communications, education, what have you. You've got other funds set aside specifically for middle mile connections, where there's just pieces of a fiber route or wireless route that are missing. And so that's very infrastructure oriented. And then you will have a cybersecurity component in there as well. So each of those components are defined very clearly for us in local government.
Different entities have different standards and thresholds that they've defined as broadband. One of the things that we try not to get hung up on is the speed itself, and really just trying to stay on top of future-proof technologies, so that when we think broadband, we think, well, what we're ultimately trying to do is create something that is ready for the next big thing, the thing that is most resilient to future developments.
Yeah, I think the pandemic highlighted how important broadband is. A lot of people knew about it before the pandemic, but it really highlighted how if you have adequate telecommunications infrastructure available to you, you have access to every opportunity you want and need, whether it's healthcare, jobs, education, or just being able to see family that you can't be in the same room with because we're in a pandemic. And in the same way, it highlighted the opportunities you don't have if you don't have adequate telecommunications infrastructure. So at the county, we really see broadband as the great equalizer, right? If you're in a rural community, you're distance away from a university or from headquarters of the job you want matters a lot less if you have adequate broadband.
So when people think about the physical internet, usually what comes to mind is, hey, that's that wire or wires that are on a wall plate, maybe in my home office or in my living room, and I plug into the physical internet there, or my modem plugs into my physical internet there. And there's the thought that the physical infrastructure is synonymous with the internet provider. But there are good examples out there of how those things can be decoupled. And so let me give you an example. So when we think about public roads on Interstate 5, right, they're public roads, and we have anyone who wants can drive on them. And so that includes in the transportation industry, companies like UPS, like FedEx, a government organization called USPS, right? And consumers and citizens, they get to choose which package provider, transportation provider they want to use on any given day based on the price and based on the service. It's a good reference point for what we can think of when we think about open access. Another great example is how airports work. So the public actually owns the airport.
The benefit in that is that cities aren't operating airlines. They're providing a vital infrastructure, a really expensive infrastructure, and an opportunity to establish a sort of level playing field that facilitates the public's good as the primary interest. So it enables, there's really mutual benefit for everyone. The carriers have an opportunity to connect, and the community is, the community's interests are really represented by having a manager who is looking at interconnection as the primary outcome. Options, right? We want to create as many options as possible because that results in competition and really great service and affordable prices.
These, I think, are good reference examples for how the internet can also work. And so what that looks like specifically is the wire that maybe comes into your house is owned by the public, just like the public owns a road or owns the airport. And then on top of that physical infrastructure, those wires, are services that are provided by the private sector. So if you think about it in those terms, then it sort of opens the door for interventions, for investment from the public to communities that have otherwise been underserved. So maybe the houses are really spread out. Maybe it's a community like Blue River that's hard to get to, that's expensive to get to, and so isn't well served by private sector internet service providers. And so there's an opportunity for local government, for the public to invest in infrastructure, just like we invest in the roads, and then to invite the private sector internet service providers to offer services over the top.
Yeah, we have, the most robust telecommunications infrastructure in Lane County is in Eugene and Springfield in the metro area. But what we've seen is that has created density of internet service providers. It's created competition. And so prices have gone down and options have increased even in areas outside of Eugene and Springfield, which is great for consumers. That's what we want. And that, infrastructure in the metro area has facilitated broadband expansion and accessibility in rural areas, whether it's Oak Ridge, Florence, or Bonita, Cottage Grove, Cresswell. And we've seen them continue to expand on the infrastructure in the urban area to keep providing more and more accessibility in rural areas. So it's very much not a rural versus urban issue. Infrastructure in either helps the other.
The Park Place Interconnect is an interconnection facility. We call it a carrier-neutral interconnection facility. Those are facilities that exist throughout the country and world. The internet is essentially a collection of networks, and those networks connect with one another in these facilities. Has high connectivity to the metro area, Eugene and Springfield, but its value extends well beyond the metro area, not only to the rural areas of Lane County, but also the rural areas of southwestern Oregon. The hub is really an important piece of the infrastructure going forward. And so when we think about these infrastructure bills that are coming down and the dollars, the Park Place Interconnect is going to play an important role and an important opportunity It's going to be a question about, well, how are you going to do all these great things? And when the answer is, well, we have a interconnection facility in Eugene that is providing tremendous opportunity and has significant capacity, that's going to be a tremendous benefit and a really attractive component to the funds going forward. And we really look forward to that. That's why it was constructed, was to be future-proofed, to serve the rural part of our community. And it's a priority, absolutely, for the facility.
Last year, I visited Mackenzie High School. Great high school up along the Mackenzie River. And you walk inside, and on the left is the gymnasium. They actually have a new gym, and it's gorgeous. But on the right is a wall full of pictures of all the graduating classes over the years, over the decades at Mackenzie School. And there are a lot of pictures from decades ago, huge graduating classes. In recent years, the picture and the number of kids in it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. We can help them turn the tide, and we can do that by investing in internet infrastructure, and it makes the great quality of life out there something that can go hand in hand with remote work, with thriving tourism. There's a lot of enablement that can happen from targeted and strategic investments in internet infrastructure. The internet is one of those things that many of us just take for granted. Usually it's working, it's on, we can check our emails, the email comes through. But in time of a disaster like the Holiday Farm fire and a need for communication between first responders, between community members who want to get in touch with their loved ones, if that's not there, if the internet's not there, that whole ability to communicate and reach our loved ones breaks down. But there's also applicability into just like basic services. So for example, during the Holiday Farm fire, the local gas station wasn't able to pump gas into fire trucks and other first responder vehicles because the credit card machine required internet access. So again, we sort of generally take it for granted that internet will be there when we need it. And it's times like the Holiday Farm fire where we find out, hey, when it's not there, it has all these implications and it's used in ways that people sort of tend to forget. And we are reminded of that during times of disaster.
When emergency responders are heading into any incident, they need to be able to talk to two different groups of people. First, they obviously need to be able to talk to the other responders going to the same call, but they also need to be able to talk to their dispatch center or the emergency operations center that's managing the event. And that center is usually quite a bit further away from the incident. So in order to do that, we use radio sites for their on-the-ground communications, and we typically use wireless broadband to connect those emergency responders back to the dispatch centers and EOCs. So a dispatch center is going to be able to tell them how bad the incident is before they get there. That's where they get all of their pre-knowledge of the incident. And it's also critical to keep the first responders safe because they are regularly reporting back to the dispatch center to say where they are, what they're doing, what else they might need. If we'd already had the network infrastructure in place, when we lost the Mount Hagen radio site, we simply would have switched the first responders to the radio sites that were east of Mount Hagen and one that's slightly to the west. Unfortunately, with our current network configuration, all of the connection routes go through Mount Hagen. It's a single point of failure. And so even though our radio sites survived and they could talk to each other when they were east of Mount Hagen, they couldn't talk to their dispatch center or the EOC anymore. So if we had had this funding and if we had this infrastructure in place, we would have simply rerouted the traffic over different lines. I think we have a great opportunity to extend fiber to rural communities. I think while we're doing that, it's also important for us to think about this emergency communications network and take a little bit of that funding and set it aside for this wireless broadband connection so that we have another option. We need to have those connections in place before we have a major incident so that we've got tools to work with.
You know, I think when it comes down to it, the lack of broadband connectivity throughout rural parts of Lane County especially, it's an equity issue at the end of the day, right?
basically, as it stands, some people have access to opportunity that others will never have unless physical infrastructure is provided to facilitate broadband. And so at the county, we talk a lot about equity, on centering equity in our programs and in our services and making sure we're serving all members of our community, whether it's rural, urban, tribal members, people of color. Everyone deserves opportunity. And with broadband, you access a whole lot of opportunity. And so this is an equity issue, and I think it's important for us as a community and as a region to understand it that way and to also put action behind that.
Today, we now have a large amount of federal funding potentially being able to be accessed by our local community. It's enough money to close the digital divide permanently here. The digital divide is the distance between where many people are at and equity. It's the difference between being able to get an education or not. It's the difference between being able to get health care or not. It's the difference between being able to get gainful employment, put food on the table, pay your mortgage or not. It's important, it's real, and we can close it in the next few years with the federal funding that is being made available. What I know for sure is that this is a fixable problem if we work together and we're smart about our approach and we make strategic investments using models like open access. We've done this before with projects like HugeNet. We have local infrastructure called the Willamette Internet Exchange that provides a level of resilience to our community. So we have a track record in this community of being able to develop the type of infrastructure that provides a very clear ROI to the public, in addition to the private sector. And so we can do this, we have done it, let's keep going.
In my world in telecommunications and in interacting with other cities and counties across the U.S., I hear that local governments and their elected leaders really want to make a difference. And that's really what they're going after. They want to step into the new world, and they want to know how they can do that, how they can make a difference. It really goes back to your authority, to a local government's authority to determine, especially in Oregon, under our home rule constitution, to determine what is in the public interest of their community. They can gain insight from the other projects that are in the US or even in Oregon or even in Eugene, but a set of local officials need look no further than what they know from their experience to be in the public interest of their community. That's how they will make a difference.
Thank you, Diane. I appreciate that. So as is clear, there's a lot of information in that video, but I hope it's equally clear why this topic matters so much, why it's so important, and why we feel the need to come to you today and agree on a regional vision and path moving forward. And so before we dive into the rest of the discussion, I just want to provide two definitions that will help frame the discussion today, but also in our efforts moving forward. The first is telecommunications, or telecom for short, and that's really the exchange of information over significant distances by any electronic means. So that's a very broad term that includes a wide range of technology and infrastructure. So that can be hardwired phones, cell phones, wireless microwave communications, fiber, satellites, radio, TV, and then the internet. And that's where the second definition comes in, and that's for broadband. And that is a definition of internet based on download and upload speeds. And so currently the FCC defines that as 25 megabits per second download and 3 megabits per second for upload. I think as we get into the discussion, you'll see that's probably not an adequate definition of broadband for today's world and the opportunities that a lot of people need to access. But for the county, when we frame this discussion, and as you saw in the video, it really needs to be under that telecom umbrella with a focus on fiber-enabled broadband for community benefit, but also wireless for emergency communications or areas where fiber just will never be physically possible. And so to expand more on wireless and why that piece is so important, I'm gonna pass it off to Mike Harmon.
Thank you, Austin. Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. So, as Austin pointed out, fiber has tremendous capacity. You can run gigabit speed internet connections. What we experienced in the Holiday Farm fire was a complete loss, and you saw the video and some pictures of the Mount Hagen site. We experienced a complete loss of that radio site, and as I mentioned there, that site, in terms of the connectivity, the broadband connectivity, is a single point of failure. We've got one line of radio towers all connected together that run up and down Highway 126. And so what that meant was not only did the first responders lose communications in that area, we were actually able to restore that part of it fairly quickly with other sites that were nearby. But they lost the ability to talk to their dispatcher. Even on the unaffected sites, the sites that survived the fire, they still lost their connection. And so in terms of our response, in terms of emergency communications, the first thing that we put back was a temporary microwave connection so that we could connect all of the surviving sites and provide communications to anybody who was working in that area. We were very fortunate to have that volunteer group come together and come into Lane County, the OIR group that you've heard a lot about. And that's what they worked on as well. They were standing up broadband wireless connectivity to fix that issue with the fuel pump, to provide connectivity to the schools. They were supporting a health clinic out there for a while, I believe. So wireless does have some limitations that fiber doesn't have. It doesn't typically have the same throughput. But for emergency communications, we don't need that much throughput. We just need rock solid, reliable connectivity. And so my plea to this group and to this organization is that as we have opportunities for funding to come through, we do need to set aside a portion of that for the wireless connectivity that would support emergency communications. We could identify key points of infrastructure throughout the county, fire stations, libraries, schools, set them up with a wireless connection, and they would have a good enough connection pipe even in the middle of a disaster while we put everything else back together. It gives us a place to work. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. So I think this is my part to come in and share with all of you vision, goals, and tactics. I'm going to show my screen really quick here to bring these up just so we can see them as we talk about them. With any luck, you're seeing a vision statement in front of you. Today on the video, you got to be introduced to many or several of the key players we have in our community that are already taking on this work. There are many, many more. And this vision statement you see before, we worked really hard to make sure their perspectives, their voices were incorporated into this. So I'll read it quickly for you. As telecommunications is an essential service, maximize outsized funding secured by Lane County agencies and partners to address unmet local needs with a focus on equity for affordable, resilient, high-speed internet connectivity and reliable and resilient emergency response across our county in a manner that is in the public interest. The importance of a vision, really, as you heard in the video, as you're hearing in the news, there's a lot of funding being made available, and there is an opportunity to close the divide. But it's really important, I think, for us to line up with that funding, to have everybody working towards a common vision, and they all really resonated with this. So it connects us together as we look at funding, as we look at that purpose and vision we have for closing the digital divide and putting in the infrastructure we need to be able to do that. So this is really what this vision statement is about. And behind it are some goals that we're here to talk about today, which really come to 4 major areas. One, broadband should be available and affordable for all. I think that speaks for itself. So that's the goal that we have, that this vision would help us, that would help us attain this vision. Broadband and emergency response communication should be reliable and resilient. We've talked about that today. And broadband should be fast. I'll take a moment on this one. Like, what is fast? You know, and you have to be a little careful about defining fast because that's not the only focus. But I thought it is good to talk about how it is defined today at a what they call 25.3, 25 megabits per second rate download. You know, the rate at which you can bring in material to you, and 3 megabit upload. And the idea being you're going to consume more than you're going to send. This standard was set in 2015 at the federal level, upgraded after 2010 when it was set at 4.1. And today, you know, as you can see here, we're all on video. We're sending content up and down. And so we really looked at a definition of 100 megabits per second symmetrical is what they call it, up and down. To think about it in the visual that was used in the video of the roads, it's kind of like if I-5 said, well, you know, people go south more than north, so we'll have 3 lanes going south and 1 going north. It really constrains traffic. And so defining a fast rate of speed really helps understand what people are using today. And it creates a goal that we can shoot for as we bring fiber and connectivity in our community that really meets the needs that we're seeing from households these days. 25.3 might meet the needs of an individual, but we have households full of multiple people that all want to be on the internet at the same time. And I don't know about you, I have a gamer at home and we sit in our house and, you know, sometimes it's like, hey, can you get off the internet for a minute to do something? So, you know, it's all about creating speeds that meet the needs of every individual out there as they're both trying to learn at home, work at home, perhaps attend a telemedicine appointment at home, all at the same time. And then deployment and adoption education is provided to ensure public access. So, you know, awareness and access. So those are 4 goals that we bring forward, and then some tactics. And so tactical areas, this is talking, you got introduced to many of these features today as part of the video and as part of our conversation, but one tactic is open access connectivity, you know, investing in open access resilient infrastructure that encourages private sector competition and, you know, much like the roads we invest in, allows all that different kind of traffic to flow in and out of communities. Local interconnects and exchanges, you saw Jake talk about that. You know, those hubs where everybody can go in and connect to that infrastructure and, you know, participate. And then attract bandwidth providers, driving up competition and access. And then data and analytics, really keeping track of the problem and, you know, or the progress, knowing where we need to light up our communities, where we need to invest. So those are 4 tactics that we put forward, and it's our pleasure to introduce you today. And I think up next we have Alex. And Alex, did you want me to show the broadband website?
I don't think you have to, Mike. I'm just going to be very brief here, Commissioners. Alex Kyler, Lane County's Intergovernmental Relations Manager. The memo that you have does have a section about funding opportunities. I think in the video, Pam Berrien did a very nice job of outlining the opportunity that's in front of us with respect to the infrastructure bill that the Congress just passed. Yet to be seen is if there would be additional resources in what we hope is a bill that comes out of the Senate that's been termed Build Back Better and returns over to the House. So we'll continue to monitor that. As Pam indicated, over 5 years, about $65 billion for new telecommunications infrastructure in the infrastructure bill. So definitely there are opportunities. Our understanding is that each state will receive $100 million under that bill. And then there will likely be an add-on on top of that based on some sort of formulaic metric. So north of $100 million over 5 years coming into the state of Oregon. What I don't know exactly is where that will land inside the state. And the reason I bring this up is that during the 2021 legislative session, particularly the fire impacted counties made many of the same pitches that you heard Mr. Harmon make regarding some of the wireless communications systems that the fires of Labor Day 2020 really showed some of our weaknesses in those systems. And unfortunately, at the end of the session, none of those projects actually got funded. And instead, the legislature allocated $120 million to the Oregon Business Development Department, and they placed it into what's called the Broadband Fund. The Broadband Fund was established in the first or second or third, I can't quite remember which special session of 2020. And when you look at that fund, we're a little bit nervous that the kinds of projects that the emergency communications folks would like to see funded don't fit very well in the sidebars established for that fund. So I don't want to say this is all doom and gloom, because it's not, but there's definitely language in that in the sidebars of the broadband fund that show sort of preference for underserved areas and areas with low speeds, and we're just not exactly sure that that's going to work all that well when we talk about emergency communication. So it's one of the things that we'll be looking at through the Oregon legislature as we come into the 22 session and further into the 23 session. I think we're well positioned with both our history as a wildfire impacted county, and for some of the champions in the legislature who are working on telecommunications issues. So hopefully we'll get that rectified and it won't be a problem. The point is quite a bit of money, both at the state and depending on how the federal government delivers those money from the Fed. So we think we will have really great opportunities moving forward. Austin and I, in fact, have a meeting with OBDD tomorrow morning, not directly related to broadband, but we hope to find out a little bit more about what the timing is for the broadband funding. And as far as the Infrastructure Act, it's still a little early in the process to know exactly how those dollars are coming, but the timing for this presentation, obviously, hopefully give us direction to keep on moving forward and looking at the various options available, and we come back with some recommendations, and we'll continue to monitor where the dollars are for that work. And I'm happy to take any questions when we get to that part of the presentation.
Thank you, Alex. So just to close out our presentation, Chair Burney and Commissioners, it's clear there's more funding than ever from the state and federal government, as we just heard, and it's clear there's an opportunity to enhance our telecom infrastructure in Lane County that would protect and support communities for generations. But really, to capture that opportunity, we know we need to be ready both internally and as a region. And so we would like to hear your feedback on the visions, goals, and tactics today. And with your support moving forward, we are also exploring certain tactics that we would like to bring back to you for action in the future. Some of that could include a telecommunications coordinator at the county to lead this work regionally, a funding pool for telecommunications infrastructure, similar to how funds operate for other forms of infrastructure already, or even funding programs for local partners and providers performing work that aligns with our county's goals and vision, because we know we're going to need a lot of partners to do this work successfully. And so with that, I'd really like to open it up for any questions and discussion.
Thank you very much, everyone. It's too bad you're not all on the same page and asking us for the same thing. Forgive me. Commissioners, are there any comments, questions, issues that you would like to bring up on this item? Oh, I'm sorry. My screen is all messed up. Yes, Commissioner Butt.
Thank you. And for someone who has been kicked off the internet 3 times during this particular segment, I cannot tell you how excited I am and thrilled about this particular project and vision and effort. I've been working quite a bit with all the folks that have been presenting and feel the pain of people out in unincorporated Lane County who can't get reliable, affordable internet. I made it a passion of mine as I've been serving as commissioner. I would urge all my fellow commissioners to really seriously consider this vision. We're having an historic amount of funding coming into our area. And it is imperative that we as a region come together with all of the tech experts and staff that are working so hard to go after those very competitive dollars. We have the technical expertise here. It's all about how we coordinate our effort and go after those funding options methodically and strategically. I have been able to visit many of the tower sites with several of the folks here, especially there with Mike. It's phenomenal what kind of technology we have at those tower sites, and basically what most people in the Metro Center would consider the middle of nowhere, on the highest and steepest hills that are a little scary to drive. And thankfully I wasn't driving. And thankfully you all were driving. But I cannot implore to the rest of my commissioners how important this is for our entire community, and especially those that really just don't have any access at all to broadband wireless internet. Thank you. And if I'm going to keep trying to come back to this meeting because this is one of my favorite subjects. But if not, I'm switching back and forth from video to phone. Thank you, Chair.
We were wondering what you were doing, Commissioner. Any other commissioner? Yes, Vice Chair Farr.
Thank you, Chair Bernie. And, I'm going to talk a little bit about the history that brought us to the point we're at today. This is a very historic moment in that we're talking about broadband internet service to all points in Lane County. And I'm going to go back to the first time I met Pam Berrien in 1995 when I first became a Eugene City Councilor. After I replaced Bobby Green on the Eugene City Council, we formed a council committee on telecommunications. It was me and Sean Bowles, Dr. Bowles, and Nancy Nathanson. And the things we were talking about were where do we site telecommunications towers in the city of Eugene? And we came up with 2 ordinances out of that committee, significantly. They seem pretty dated. However, those ordinances have been renewed through the years. Initially, we were talking about how does the city of Eugene respond, and how do we establish franchise fees, for instance? How do we establish right-of-way? It's very early days of right-of-way for telecommunications companies wishing to operate in the city of Eugene. And we wrote what was a groundbreaking ordinance at the time, the telecommunications ordinance that is still in use by the city of Eugene. But to put emphasis on the genesis, this is in 1996. The council committee forwarded recommendations to the city council, including this, the ninth recommendation. The recommendation is 1996. The city shall use telecommunications along with other media, including an emphasis on the internet, to communicate with and provide information to services to citizens, public institutions, and businesses. The genesis is, this is what we're talking about today, is broadband to the very tips of Lane County. And back then we were talking about dial-up service to a few people inside the city of Eugene. So it's amazing, Mike and Austin, what the field that you're working in today and what it felt like before we even had cell phones back in 1996, 1997. And it's remarkable that Lane County has become, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lane County has become a leader in exploring this. How do we get broadband to what are very difficult geographic locations throughout the community? But one thing I wanted to just mention is something that Mike Harmon said regarding wireless communication and how it provides the in his words, rock solid communications during an emergency. So putting everything in perspective is really a pretty remarkable feat that you're undergoing at this point in time. I'm an observer. I get to watch these what seem like miracles to me, happen. And it's, I agree with anyone who says that we need to get access to Mackenzie High School, for instance, and we need to get access to Commissioner Buck so she can stay on these meetings. It's remarkable the field you're working with today. So, Chair Bernie, that's all I have to say about it. Nothing more than just a reflection on how far we have come, but a recognition of how far we do need to come to, because right now, as we speak, at this moment in time, one of our commissioners is not with us in this meeting. In a 100% fashion. So thank you very much for allowing me to wax on that.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Any other commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Bozovich.
Thank you. And as a commissioner that has high-speed broadband fiber connection to my house, I've lost connectivity multiple times in the last couple of months as the providers had multiple issues in this area over the last several months. So having a fiber connection does not guarantee uninterrupted service. That said, I have a couple questions about this before I'm all in on the tactics. I was working for eWeb when we built our dark fiber ring. And also when Lane ESD built their dark fiber around their facilities. My Charter Spectrum, sorry, I keep using the wrong. My Spectrum fiber runs on poles parallel to Lane ESDs, right, to get to my house, because Lane ESDs is at the high school across the drive from me. How do we know that if we build dark fibers, this structure that you want to have publicly accessible, that providers will actually use it? Because it seems to me the providers would prefer to own the fiber rather than lease fiber. So can you talk about that a little bit? Because it seems like we've pretty much got a lot of dark fiber owned by public agencies already in this community.
I'll start and everyone else feel free to jump in. I think what we've heard from providers, Commissioner Bozovich, is that there are certain areas where it simply isn't a good business decision to expand fiber or infrastructure. And it's not because they don't want to, it's just that there isn't that density of consumers or ratepayers that would make that decision feasible or profitable. And so what we've seen is when local governments, county or cities can invest and install that infrastructure and then essentially lease it out, it becomes a more practical and an easier business decision. And it then attracts that competition and multiple providers. There are those areas you talked about though where dark fiber exists and is not accessible for a variety of reasons. I think that's probably even why it's more important that we have this regional coordination and vision to prevent that from happening further. But I'll let anyone else jump in and take that as well.
I'll just jump in and say, I think you nailed it there, Austin. And an example is downtown fiber in Eugene, really where they did run leveraging conduit, blue and fiber connectivity throughout there, and through that interconnect provided access for many providers, and they took advantage of that and created a nice center of competition there. So that was part of the example that was described there, and I think demonstrates that from a concept.
Anyone else? I'm sorry, Commissioner. Anyone else want to respond to Commissioner Bozovich or no? Go ahead. Sorry for the interruption.
I just, I fear the county adding a piece of infrastructure that we will be maintaining and all that. I think we have to be careful and make sure we have the right partner that actually owns this public infrastructure. Fiber is a unique piece of infrastructure that takes a unique skill set. Landing fiber and distributing it is definitely a highly technical issue. I'll just say that from my experience at eWeb. It's like a whole different set of staff had to get retrained to handle the fiber connections. And I landing in at some of the pump stations that I worked on the more mechanical side of things. I remember just the cards alone could be thousands of dollars to go from that laser pulses to electrical pulses that computers read in ones and zeros. That said, there's also other expansions of the internet that are getting faster and faster and more widely distributed, and competitive pricing's coming down. Satellite internet, Starlink, and some of the other systems proposed, and there are multiple articles about the $1 trillion investment in space in internet that's coming in the future. And then even last mile, like FastLink, that's wireless. And then, of course, very short distance last link is the 5G network, where you know, if you're within 5 football fields of a tower, you can get, 60, megabit at least upload speeds, not quite 100, but you're getting close there. Can you talk a little bit about, maybe having, and particularly when you talk about resilience and the ability to communicate when normal landlines get burned up, which includes fiber, it burns too, or melts, I should say. Maybe we take a look at, Starlink and some of these other options as that backup system, and also, rather than trying to build fiber to highly dispersed locations, that may be the answer. And I know with HughesNet, you have to be able to see the southern sky, but I don't know whether Starlink and some of the future of satellite internet requires that sort of exposure. And I know FastLink, you have to have line of sight to see. So could you talk a little bit about those wireless options to fiber?
Yeah, so let me respond to that, Commissioner. Thank you. So I think the end goal for us is to have, first of all, a good network design, which includes rings and not straight lines. I think that's fairly well understood. That it's hard to break a circle. It's harder to break a circle than it is to break a line. And so to the extent that we can look at what's already here in terms of the hard lines and the wireless technology, do an assessment of what's already there, and then finish closing out those loops. And then the other piece, and you referenced this, is it needs to be a multifaceted, a multimedia approach. So we often talk about, multi-path, multi-tech approaches to redundancy, so that if the fiber burns up, we've got a microwave line. If a microwave has to be taken out for service or repair, we've got a telco line. Whatever we've got, having more than one choice and having more than one route is really critical. You mentioned Starlink, and so in the radio world, in the emergency communications world, Starlink is something that we're very excited about. We're looking to put that on one of our emergency communications trailer. Honestly, right now, just to try it out. We don't know how well it's going to work on a radio site where there's a little bit of timing involved in those communications. The fact, even though it's going speed of light, the fact that it has to go all the way to outer space and back might not work for all of our sites, but it could work for some. And it certainly could work for telephony. And we've already got people using it for some internet connectivity in areas that's hard to get to. We have some satellite trailers that we use here for emergency cell phone communications in a pinch. During the snowstorm of 2019, there were places up around Lowell where that technology worked very, very well. And there were places up Highway 126 where, because of the steepness of the canyons, it didn't work well at all. So you're right. I think that technology is out there. It's all getting faster. It's all getting less expensive. And we are looking for an approach where we can take an array and find the right solutions for the right places.
I'll just jump in and add a little. Thank you, Mike Harmon. That was a great overview. And those are great questions. Just as an overall, though, from an asset perspective, the gold standard is underground fiber, right? It's a long-term asset. Its lifespan tends to be, a half century. And, it's the gold standard for speed, resiliency, and such. But it's also the most expensive and sometimes the most difficult to run. And so, of course, you have aerial fiber. There's some good things there. It's easy to replace if it does get damaged because it's up in the air and you can get to it. And it provides that speed. But you're absolutely right. There's microwave connectivity. And now, low Earth orbit internet is newer. We're still learning a lot about it. As you mentioned, Starlink, it's geofenced. So you can't just pop it on a trailer and drive it somewhere. It will only operate where you subscribe it. So you can't just go move it. And there's still gaps, but we're definitely learning more. It's evolving. So we have evolving side, and then we have tried true long-term assets. So it really is looking at what's the best investment for the region that you're moving to, and also creating, what is it? Never put all your eggs in one basket, right? Leveraging multiple, rings, multiple methods is good. But I did want to mention that hierarchy of idealness where possible in the types of connectivity.
I certainly appreciate all that. I just don't want to have us be like CenturyLink and invest a lot in DSL to only to find it left behind. And I also want to make sure that if we are going to invest capital money into infrastructure, that infrastructure is also, like you said, resilient long-term and has the proper ownership and people are interested in actually using it. I don't want to be building the bridge to nowhere in Alaska with infrastructure dollars and spend a lot of bucks that no one uses. So we just need to be cognizant of all that. I think all this fits under the tactics that you all have proposed. So I don't really have a problem with that, but I just want to make us be cognizant that fiber is not the be all end all. And when you talk about highly dispersed users, they're, getting to them in a wireless fashion may actually be the correct way to connect everybody.
You're not going to go ahead, Mike.
Just one quick follow-up I wanted to mention though, because we talked about usability out there. I just wanted to mention Internet of Things sensors, Shake Alert, Fire Alert. More and more, we're wiring up our entire environment with sensors to understand it more, to drive understanding. So I just wanted to highlight it isn't always just a community out there. Connectivity is used for everything now. So I'll stop there.
Yeah. I'll just mention Purple Air is one of my favorite sites during wildfire events.
This has been a fascinating discussion, but yes, I believe Commissioner Trieger, I might also want to participate. Commissioner Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, we've come a long way since a couple of Dixie cups and a really long piece of string, right? How we communicate. Dating myself with that reference. But this was really, it's a discussion item. It's a great sort of introduction and laying the groundwork. And I really appreciate particularly, teasing out the difference between telecommunications and broadband and how they're different and why we need to focus on telecommunications, particularly around the emergency preparedness piece. And I really appreciated in the video, the statement that this is a fixable problem and that we do not only, I think, in service to our communities, have a responsibility to fix it, but we're about to have opportunity we haven't had before in terms of the resource to be part of fixing it outside of a privatized system, which by definition has a lot of baked in inequities and challenges for us, again, in our emergency response. So very much just wanted to hop on to appreciate all the work of staff, all this information as I'm getting up to speed and learning about this issue. Thank you very much for all your time. Obviously, a lot went into preparing, and I know even more is going to go into from this moment forward and whatever we arrive at. So thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mike Finch, I want to thank you for a new term I've learned today from you, which is the hierarchy of idealism. I was unfamiliar with that concept. But before I launch into demonstrating how much I don't know, I do know this, but for the sake of the discussion and maybe those few listening, would you like to share with us the definition of dark fiber? With someone?
Dark fiber is really fiber that's in the ground and available that's not lit up, meaning it's not really in use. That's the most common term or definition for dark fiber.
And this, thank you. And this may be a dumb question. I'm actually leading somewhere here, but is there any way to calculate the percent of fiber in the ground now that is unused in terms of its capacity?
That is a great question. And Austin, I don't know if you did you want to go first, Austin?
I'll start. So the biggest challenge, I think, for much of this issue is accurately knowing and measuring where fiber or broadband access exists and to what degree. And that's getting better every year, but much of that goes back to how the FCC aggregates that data or how it does not mandate a certain level of validity in that data. So it's a huge burden for communities to try and figure that out. Through our efforts and Speed Up America, which has been going on for a few years now, we've gotten a lot closer to knowing locally what access actually looks like. But there's not a mechanism right now that would force fiber owners or providers to just flat out say, here's where all of our fiber, dark or lit, exists. So it's a very hard question to answer. I'm sorry. It's hard for practitioners to even get clarity on that at times.
Thank you. It's been 10 years, so this is about as dated as you can get. But back then, my understanding was there's a lot of dark fiber, i.e., there was a lot of existing fiber that still had capacity where it was, right? So it seems to me that this is kind of a no-brainer. One, as well as the real human need to expand broadband to everyone that we can, correct? And now that need meets opportunity with these federal dollars that are becoming available. I mean, am I getting this correct? Okay, so a lot of the questions I heard Commissioner Bozievich ask really just relate to being smart about it. And my sense is that as we move forward, we have capacity, and we'll always salt and pepper you with dumb questions, but we have capacity internally to be smart about moving forward. And all that encompasses. So I guess my question is, why wouldn't we move forward with trying to match the opportunity of funding with the need for universal broadband accessibility?
I'll speak first. I think to Commissioner Bozievich's question earlier, I think it's more about how we do this and where we fill actual gaps in the ecosystem, right? So defining—
That's what I meant by smart, yes. Yeah.
Defining the county's role in this, I don't see a scenario where we walk away from this issue completely for all the reasons that we just discussed. But I think it is worth, measuring and being thoughtful about what our role is and where we are truly filling gaps.
Okay, so I'll go ahead, Mike, and then ask a couple more things.
I was just going to say, and that's what's important and remarkable about the vision is that it's moving. Yes, of course, there's a lot of people moving forward. The key is, how can we move forward together? It's not about controlling or minimizing the autonomy of all the players that are already out there, because they're all doing great things, right? It's about recognizing, actually, they all want the same thing, and we want to work together. So this is what's remarkable about this, is creating a regional shared vision so that everybody is autonomous, independent players on the field, but they all know where the ball's going and where the goal is, right? And so that we can work together with this funding. And by coming together as a community, we make ourselves appealing and a place that those that have funding to spend can see it's going to maximize, because they want the same thing. We all want the same thing. And so it's really, that's the important part here is, yes, of course, it's a no-brainer to move forward. But as Austin said, it's how, and how is working together and listening to each other and empowering each other and not restricting.
So Lane County in this instance becomes a convener, a broker, and a catalyst. Last question. Let's assume we achieve this vision. Well, maybe almost last. How many jobs is it going to create to do that work for the county? Not just the county meaning government, but residents in the county.
I think that's hard to predict right now. There you can think of it, I think, in multiple ways, right? So there's the layer of the county's own employment, and I think there is a need to look at how we resource this, because right now it's split between the 4 people you see here on the screen and a few more. But I think also, if you think about the construction impacts, Chair Bernie, right? Thinking about the work and the dollars that go into installing whatever type of infrastructure it is. And then there's also, I think, the end goal for a lot of rural communities, especially, or any community that accesses broadband, is that tie to job creation, because now they can live and work in the same community, or the way it supports telehealth in those jobs, or remote learning in those jobs. So there are a lot of studies that try and attach exact numbers to that. It's hard to get to for us at this very early stage, but it is something we would want to measure and track.
No, I didn't expect an answer, Austin. I just wanted to make sure we don't neglect looking at that. And I also think that as we move forward on this vision smartly, a part of it is literally articulating and communicating to rural communities, to various private groups, the opportunities that this would create, and the encouragement and resources we can provide for them in exploiting the opportunity. Finally, and thank you for bearing with me, everyone. I remember reading in some of the documents attendant to this that a local 25% match, is that correct, is required to access these resources, or is that incorrect?
Chair Bernie, I think, sorry, I was muted. Chair Bernie, commissioners, I think some of those details are yet to be seen. I was looking at, for example, there's in the infrastructure bill, there's actually some wildfire related dollars, and potentially some of the emergency communications stuff could fit under that. It does appear that it depends is the answer to your question, that sometimes we might see like a 25% local match required for some of these grants, but it does appear, at least in that particular pot, that there may be some exceptions to that. So I think probably as a sort of as a guide moving forward, anytime we're talking about state or federal funds, we're probably going to have some kind of matching dollars locally. Typically, hopefully in the 10 to 25% range and not more than that. And then there are some opportunities where we'll probably see less match than that. But we just don't have those really specific answers for you just yet.
Commissioners, thanks for indulging me. I could have more, but I start to sound like an engineer's son, so I'll be quiet. Are there any more comments, questions, discussion from any other commissioners? Yes, Vice Chair Farr.
Thanks, Chair Bernie. And this is just a general question that probably there's no answer to. The obsolescence of fiber. At what point is this going to be an obsolete system? Because it's replacing what is now an obsolete system more thoroughly. And I think back on when eWeb first came to the board, to the Eugene City Council, asking for use of the steam conduits to provide a dark fiber downtown, very tiny network. And the discussion then was, is this the future of the technology? Well, the question there is, at what point will all of this infrastructure that we are investing in become obsolete for more wireless communication that is more thorough? Probably no answer, but something to think about.
Oh, I think there's an answer, Vice Chair. Yeah, Mike.
I will just say that fiber literally moves at the speed of light. And that's fiber optics, right? So it's light speed, massive quantities of data. So it is as future-proof as you get.
And I appreciate that, Mike, but a backhoe can disrupt that light speed. And, so at what point do we put up a system that doesn't have to worry about backhoes?
Yes, and the other Mike, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Unmuting is tricky sometimes. Yes, so that's why I think having that multi-mode, multi-path is so critical, is because, it's really hard to cut a microwave line with a backhoe. So I'd like to see more of it everywhere. But the wireless stuff is getting faster and it is getting cheaper. But to Mike's point, my boss's point, the overall total cost of ownership of a fiber line is far better than the TCO on a wireless connection. So we need wireless where we need it.
And just a reminder that it takes backhoes to install the system too, whereas wireless doesn't necessarily.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Are there any other Commissioner comments? Commissioner Buck, I'm delighted you were connected the entire time of this discussion. Yeah. Listen, I want to thank you all. I want to thank you for doing this. I want to thank you for exploiting this opportunity. I hope that we see movies on ending hunger, ending poverty, ending, all these other things that some of these federal dollars might assist us with, be convening groups that are committed to it. I want on behalf of us, to thank Matt Sayer. I thought some of his anecdotes and illustrations made a lot of sense. And I'm glad that his network is in place. So thank you. I think from this body, my read is go forth and keep coordinating with us. Is that fair? Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, there is no executive session this morning. So is there anything that any commissioner would like to bring up for the good of the order this morning before we recess and resume again after lunch? Mr. Mokrahysky, do you have anything?
I don't. Thank you, Chair.
You just wanted to pop up so we could say good. Yeah.
So you know I'm here.
Okay. Commissioners, have a great lunch. We shall reconvene at 1:30. Thank you.